Wisdom 14. Folly of a navigator praying to an idol. Again, one preparing to sail and about to voyage over raging waves, calls upon a piece of wood more fragile than the ship which carries him. For it was desire for gain that planned that vessel, and wisdom was the craftsman who built it. But it is thy providence, O Father, that steers its course, because thou hast given it a path in the sea, and a safe way through the waves, showing that thou canst save from every danger, so that even if a man lacks skill, he may put to sea. It is thy will that works of thy wisdom should not be without effect. Therefore men trust their lives even to the smallest piece of wood, and passing through the billows on a raft they come safely to land. For even in the beginning, when arrogant giants were perishing, the hope of the world took refuge on a raft, and guided by thy hand left to the world the seed of a new generation. For blessed is the wood by which righteousness comes. But the idol made with hands is accursed, and so is he who made it. Because he did the work, and the perishable thing was named a god. For equally hateful to God are the ungodly man and his ungodliness. For what was done will be punished together with him who did it. Therefore there will be a visitation also upon the heathen idols. Because, though part of what God created, they became an abomination, and became traps for the souls of men, and a snare to the feet of the foolish. The origin and evils of idolatry. For the idea of making idols was the beginning of fornication, and the invention of them was the corruption of life. For neither have they existed from the beginning, nor will they exist forever. For through the vanity of men they entered the world, and therefore their speedy end has been planned. For a father, consumed with grief at an untimely bereavement, made an image of his child, who had been suddenly taken from him. And he now honored as a god what was once a dead human being, and handed on to his dependents secret rites and initiations. Then the ungodly custom, grown strong with time, was kept as a law, and at the command of monarchs graven images were worshipped. When men could not honor monarchs in their presence, since they lived at a distance, they imagined their appearance far away, and made a visible image of the king whom they honored, so that by their zeal they might flatter the absent one as though present. Then the ambition of the craftsman impelled even those who did not know the king to intensify their worship. For he, perhaps wishing to please his ruler, skillfully forced the likeness to take more beautiful form. And the multitude, attracted by the charm of his work, now regarded as an object of worship the one whom shortly before they had honored as a man. And this became a hidden trap for mankind. Because men, in bondage to misfortune or to royal authority, bestowed on objects of stone or wood the name that ought not to be shared. Afterward it was not enough for them to err about the knowledge of God, but they live in great strife due to ignorance, and they call such great evils peace. For whether they kill children in their initiations, or celebrate secret mysteries, or hold frenzied revels with strange customs, they no longer keep either their lives or their marriages pure, but they either treacherously kill one another, or grieve one another by adultery. And all is a raging riot of blood and murder, theft and deceit, corruption, faithlessness, tumult, perjury, confusion over what is good, forgetfulness of favors, pollution of souls, sex perversion, disorder in marriage, adultery and debauchery. For the worship of idols not to be named is the beginning and cause and end of every evil. For their worshippers either rave in exultation, or prophesy lies, or live unrighteously, or readily commit perjury. For because they trust in lifeless idols, they swear wicked oaths and expect to suffer no harm. But just penalties will overtake them on 2 counts. Because they thought wickedly of God in devoting themselves to idols, and because in deceit they swore unrighteously through contempt for holiness. For it is not the power of the things by which men swear, but the just penalty for those who sin, that always pursues the transgression of the unrighteous. Wisdom 15. Benefits of worshipping the true God. But thou, our God, art kind and true, patient, and ruling all things in mercy. For even if we sin we are thine, knowing thy power. But we will not sin, because we know that we are accounted thine. For to know thee is complete righteousness. And to know thy power is the root of immortality. For neither has the evil intent of human art misled us, nor the fruitless toil of painters. A figure stained with varied colors, whose appearance arouses yearning in fools, so that they desire the lifeless form of a dead image. Lovers of evil things and fit for such objects of hope, are those who either make or desire or worship them. The foolishness of worshipping clay idols. For when a potter kneads the soft earth, and laboriously molds each vessel for our service, he fashions out of the same clay both the vessels that serve clean uses, and those for contrary uses, making all in like manner. But which shall be the use of each of these? The worker in clay decides. With misspent toil, he forms a futile god from the same clay. This man who was made of earth a short time before, and after a little while goes to the earth from which he was taken, when he is required to return the soul that was lent him. But he is not concerned that he is destined to die, or that his life is brief. But he competes with workers in gold and silver, and imitates workers in copper. And he counts it his glory that he molds counterfeit gods. His heart is ashes, his hope is cheaper than dirt, and his life is of less worth than clay, because he failed to know the one who formed him, and inspired him with an active soul, and breathed into him a living spirit. But he deconsidered our existence an idle game, and life a festival held for profit. For he says one must get money however one can, even by base means. For this man, more than all others, knows that he sins when he makes from earthy matter fragile vessels and graven images. But most foolish, and more miserable than an infant, are all the enemies who oppressed thy people. For they thought that all their heathen idols were gods, though these have neither the use of their eyes to see with, nor nostrils with which to draw breath, nor ears with which to hear, nor fingers to feel with, and their feet are of no use for walking. For a man made them, and one whose spirit is borrowed formed them. For no man can form a god which is like himself. He is mortal, and what he makes with lawless hands is dead. For he is better than the objects he worships, since he has life, but they never have. Serpents in the desert. The enemies of thy people worship even the most hateful animals, which are worse than all others, when judged by their lack of intelligence. And even as animals they are not so beautiful in appearance that one would desire them. But they have escaped both the praise of God and His blessing. Wisdom 16. Therefore those men were deservedly punished through such creatures, and were tormented by a multitude of animals. Instead of this punishment thou didst show kindness to thy people, and thou didst prepare quails to eat, a delicacy to satisfy the desire of appetite, in order that those men, when they desired food, might lose the least remnant of appetite, because of the odious creatures sent to them. While thy people, after suffering want a short time, might partake of delicacies. For it was necessary that upon those oppressors inexorable want should come, while to these it was merely shown how their enemies were being tormented. For when the terrible rage of wild beasts came upon thy people, and they were being destroyed by the bites of writhing serpents, thy wrath did not continue to the end. They were troubled for a little while as a warning, and received a token of deliverance to remind them of thy law's command. For he who turned toward it was saved, not by what he saw, but by thee, the Saviour of all. And by this also thou didst convince our enemies, that it is thou who deliverest from every evil. For they were killed by the bites of locusts and flies, and no healing was found for them, because they deserved to be punished by such things. But thy sons were not conquered even by the teeth of venomous serpents. For thy mercy came to their help and healed them. To remind them of thy oracles they were bitten, and then were quickly delivered, lest they should fall into deep forgetfulness, and become unresponsive to thy kindness. For neither herb nor poultice cured them, But it was thy word, O Lord, which heals all men. For thou hast power over life and death. Thou dost lead men down to the gates of Hades and back again. A man in his wickedness kills another. But he cannot bring back the departed spirit, nor set free the imprisoned soul. Disastrous storms strike Egypt. To escape from thy hand is impossible. For the ungodly, refusing to know thee, were scourged by the strength of thy arm, pursued by unusual rains and hail and relentless storms, and utterly consumed by fire. For most incredible of all in the water, which quenches all things, the fire had still greater effect. For the universe defends the righteous. At one time the flame was restrained, so that it might not consume the creatures sent against the ungodly. But that seeing this they might know that they were being pursued by the judgment of God. And at another time even in the midst of water it burned more intensely than fire, to destroy the crops of the unrighteous land. The Israelites receive manna. Instead of these things thou didst give thy people food of angels. And without their toil thou didst supply them from heaven with bread ready to eat, providing every pleasure and suited to every taste. For thy sustenance manifested thy sweetness toward thy children. And the bread, ministering to the desire of the one who took it, was changed to suit every one's liking. Snow and ice withstood fire without melting, so that they might know that the crops of their enemies were being destroyed by the fire that blazed in the hail, and flashed in the showers of rain. Whereas the fire, in order that the righteous might be fed, even forgot its native power. For creation, serving thee who hast made it, exerts itself to punish the unrighteous, and in kindness relaxes on behalf of those who trust in thee. Therefore at that time also, changed into all forms, it served thy all-nourishing bounty, according to the desire of those who had need, so that thy sons, whom thou didst love, O Lord, might learn that it is not the production of crops that feeds man, but that thy word preserves those who trust in thee. For what was not destroyed by fire was melted when simply warmed by a fleeting ray of the sun, to make it known that one must rise before the sun to give thee thanks, and must pray to thee at the dawning of the light. For the hope of an ungrateful man will melt like wintry frost, and flow away like waste water.